Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from Crystal Palace in South London all the way down to Croydon. This ride takes about 25 minutes and you can do more or less the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, this journey takes at least 3/4 of an hour, so it certainly saves time to ride your bike. If you find this video useful or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to hit the bell icon and subscribe to the channel, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. And I'd also like to say a big thank you to the channel supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute as well, you can find the link in the description of the video. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting at the top of Belvedere Road, and you can immediately see the nice new public space that's been created by closing one arm of the road. We're heading down Belvedere Road, and a quick warning, this street is very steep. Unfortunately, that comes with the territory around Crystal Palace. If you're a local or if you've ever been there, you'll probably notice that it is very hilly around here. Fortunately, this street isn't too busy, although as you can see, it is very narrow and has parking on both sides, despite some of the houses having their own off-street parking. Now, on this channel, I try to walk a balance between showing off the best infrastructure that London has to offer and also trying to work out the best possible routes between two places that maybe don't have the best infrastructure, and I would say that this video firmly falls into the latter category. There isn't a lot of infrastructure on the way, especially until we get into Croydon town centre, but I think I figured out a pretty decent route that most adults would be happy to cycle down, even if you might not let a 12-year-old cycle it unattended, which is the quality that I aim for with the other videos. At the end of Belvedere Road, turn right onto Maberley Road, and you can immediately see that this street is a rat run. There are lots of cars going around it quite fast, despite there being a blind corner. This street could definitely benefit from a bus gate, which would stop motorists using it as a cut through between the A214 and A212. It's really not built to handle that level of traffic, and it would also probably speed up the bus service. Fortunately, we're not on it for too long, and as soon as you get to the corner here, you turn off left into South Norwood Lake and Grounds. If you're interested in the history of the park, it's centred around the lake which was created as a reservoir for the Croydon Canal. If you've never heard of the Croydon Canal, don't worry, most people haven't either. It actually closed in 1836, just 27 years after it first opened. It had the honour of being the first ever canal closed under Act of Parliament, and much of its alignment was reused for a railway. And you can see the lake just here. It's very pretty and a nice place to spend a sunny day. That said, you're cycling on these paths, which is allowed, but make sure you don't go too quickly and you give everybody a wide berth, as they're quite narrow and they're of course shared with pedestrians. You don't want to upset anybody. One other thing about cycling through this park is it actually has quite restricted opening hours. On paper at least, it closes at 5 PM every day, so it's no use really for most commuters. If that's the case, you can go via Auckland Road, turn off right off Belvedere Road, and you'll end up in much the same place as we're about to be in a second at the exit to the park, and you can pick up the rest of the route from there. But when it is open, it is a nice traffic-free environment to cycle through. Auckland Road will more or less drop you off around here. This is probably a good time to say that if you need to consult a map of this route, you can find a link in the description, and you can download a GPX file, which should work on whatever app or device you like to use. And speaking of maps, I'd also like to thank viewer John Levermore, who recently updated his brilliant map of all the London Cycle Routes videos. It's a great way of picking which video you want to watch, particularly if you need to go to a particular place, and there's also a link in the description to it. If you're wondering where we are about now, we're just a bit north of Norwood Junction Station. The roads around here are not too busy, but they're also not dead quiet. They're unfortunately quite wide, which I do think for a residential street makes it a little bit easier to ride on. You can see there's not a load of cars around here, although it was shot during the middle of the day, so I imagine it probably gets quite a bit busier around rush hour. If anybody's local around here and has any information about ways that they think the route could be improved or things that I might have missed, I'm all ears because I don't really know this part of town too well, and I'm sure this first draft route could be improved. Unfortunately, coming up here at the end of this street, there's an unavoidable bit of road that is genuinely no fun to cycle on. You can stick on this access road for a second, but then we turn off onto South Norwood Hill, which is a major road. We also need to then do a right turn after the petrol station, and a right turn on a busy road like this is no fun. Fortunately, that motorist let me go, which is actually really kind, and I wish more people would do that. That bit was unavoidable, but we're now on Holmedale Road, and actually, this bit's pretty good. This is the first bit of real cycle infrastructure we've seen, and you can see there are these planters and bollards which have closed off through traffic access to the street. There's a few sets of these all the way down Holmedale Road, and they basically remove through traffic from here, and they make the whole thing quite quiet. It's actually a really nice ride. When I came down here, I did run into a couple of cars like this one here, and it's slightly tight for space, but generally those people were all accessing their homes, so I think actually you're very unlikely to see much more traffic than I saw on here today. You can see another set of planters just coming up here, which are keeping the street quiet. If I had one criticism of this, I would say that the issue is that it doesn't have priority over the roads it crosses. It is very much a side road. But overall, it's a really welcome piece of infrastructure, and I think it makes a big difference for getting across this part of town. If anything, it would be great to see it extended west. There could be a similar treatment on Pawson's Road and Campbell Road, which would actually extend the cycleway all the way to IKEA. You can see on the right here that the street is quiet enough for a load of kids to be taught cycle training. So yeah, I'd be happy to cycle down here with kids. I think it's a really great thing. I'm not 100% sure of the political status of this road. It looks like it's still built with temporary materials. It's possible that it won't be kept permanently, especially now there's been a change of administration in Croydon. It was recently lost from Labour and has gone to the Tories, who I believe are a lot less pro LTN and cycling generally. This isn't a full low traffic neighbourhood though, and it may be that residents on the street were pleased with it. I didn't see any anti-signs or anything like that, so I guess we'll see what happens with that, but I really hope that it stays. At the end of that street, we can go turn left on Newhaven Road, and this street is very quiet again. That's because it has a historic filter at the end, so there's no through traffic on here. You'll see it in a second. It's on the right underneath its railway bridge. Unfortunately, the design is not the best. It's very old-fashioned. It has a fire gate and a bit of a chicane. I believe that's probably to stop motorcycles, but it also makes it quite annoying to cycle down, and the surface is not great either. It's a little bit bumpy. There's a point of historical interest on this street. On the left around here, there is actually a blue plaque on one of the houses for composer Samuel Coleridge Taylor. That's notable because he was the first black man to be commemorated with a blue plaque, and that was awarded in 1975. We are now in Selhurst, which is on the outskirts of Croydon, and we have to cross a reasonably busy main road here. So take a look at both sides and go down here past the cafe onto Gloucester Road. The first thing you'll probably notice here is that the street is in dire need of resurfacing. It's really, really bumpy, so if you're on a road bike, it's not the most pleasant of rides. As we clear these first few houses, you'll also probably notice that we're basically heading into a bit of light industry. It's kind of an industrial estate over the other side of the bridge. The street itself is not awful, and as far as I can tell, it's the best way into town, connecting up with a bunch of other stuff. But it does have sort of lorries and vans littered about, so it's not ideal. I'd also be particularly cautious and keep an eye on cars in driveways, because they could be liable to back out at any moment onto the road. We turn off right here at Nevile Road, and you could go a different way, but I think Nevile Road is probably slightly quieter. It's a little bit of a side street. You follow that way around until you get to the end there, and that'll take you to a road called Gladstone Road, where we'll be approaching a roundabout. Be very careful as we get to this roundabout. We're actually going to be coming off the road here, so you come off, and then there's a very, very narrow path here that runs by the side of the railway. This railway path is really not good at all. It's quite narrow, although notably it does have some street lighting. You can see the lamps here, so it should be okay to use at night if a little bit dingy. As you can probably tell, the surface is really bad and it could really do with being improved. Some of the vegetation were pulled back, and if it were resurfaced, it could be probably quite a lot nicer with a little bit of TLC. We only stay on there for a short period of time though, and we come out straight onto this cul-de-sac called Tavistock Grove. Because it's a cul-de-sac, there won't be any traffic on it, which is really nice. Wait here and cross the busy road, which is St James's Road, and we continue down Tavistock Road. As you can see, this street is, while not dead quiet, reasonably quiet. It's basically okay to cycle on. You can see the towers of Croydon looming up ahead there, and one thing you do notice around these parts of town, around Croydon and the very outer London bits, is that even in streets where you don't expect to find too many people driving, there are still quite a few cars around, and I think it just sort of shows that car use is generally just quite high around here, which I think is a shame because it has very good public transport. It's got great rail links to the centre of London. It has a tram system for local journeys, overground connections, and yet a lot of people still choose to drive. In the last few years as well, the council has actually installed quite a lot of cycle infrastructure through the centre of town, which we're about to benefit from now. You can see on Bedford Park, the street we just came on now, we were able to cycle on a protected lane there, and we're using a protected crossing of the tram tracks here as well. There isn't a protected lane in both directions, and it would be nice to see that installed, although for now it's not the end of the world to cycle for 100 metres on a relatively quiet street in the opposite way. As you come down this really quite nicely serviced street, it looks like it's been freshly done. Make sure you wait for pedestrians on the pedestrian crossing and then head onto North End. This is Croydon's main pedestrian shopping street, and quite progressively they allow cycling on here. A lot of other sort of outer London towns which have similar pedestrian shopping streets don't allow it. You can see from that van there that this route is not actually technically pedestrianised at all. You can actually drive on here, but it's effectively like a low traffic neighbourhood. It's filtered and you're only allowed to load on here, so you won't be seeing any cars down here, but you might see the odd van loading. Of course, this space is shared with pedestrians, so make sure you give everybody a wide berth, don't ride too quickly, and just be courteous to everybody around you. You see that little blue thing on the left there? That is a water fountain. They're popping up all over London, and I quite like them. They're nice, especially during the heat wave. Good way to refill your bottle of water. Note the mobility scooters using the pedestrian area, by the way. If done right, then pedestrianisation can actually be a boon to people who are less able to walk, and it means that we don't have to rely on cars to get everywhere. At the end of the pedestrian area, you can see this is all new from the pandemic. They've closed this street, the High Street, and they've added a nice two-way protected cycle path. I think that this layout is probably temporary. It would be great to see it formalised into something a little bit more finessed, but for now it's great, and it creates this excellent north-south axis all the way through the centre of Croydon. You can see it continues all the way down the shopping streets. It's actually really impressive what they've done in the centre of town here, and it basically means that the whole area is opened up to cycling. And we've gone all the way now through basically to the south of the centre of Croydon, and we end at the flyover. I'm just looking back up High Street. So thank you very much for watching that, guys. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed that. As I said at the beginning of the video, it's not quite a perfect route. There are some bits which I would think could be significantly improved, but I think it's probably the best way to get to Croydon from Crystal Palace on quiet streets. I'm definitely open to feedback though. As I said earlier, I don't know the area that well, so I'm sure there are some improvements that could be made. In the meantime, don't forget to hit subscribe on the channel and to click the bell icon so you're alerted of new videos. And anybody who wants to contribute to the channel can also sign up on Patreon, and there's a link in the description as well. See you again next time, and thank you very much. Goodbye.